Welcome to Grounds for Discussion
and Title Talk,
where we bring together closing, processing, real estate,
and coffee, of course.
Whether you're a buyer, seller, agent, or fellow industry professional, join us as we unpack the processes that make real estate deals happen. Hello, I'm Jennifer, your escrow officer.
And I'm Barbi, your processor.
And today we have the beautiful and elegant Mary Hogan.
Welcome.
Our amazing 1031 exchange manager, but you actually have a title. So tell us your title.
I'm the 1031 exchange officer within Hogan Land Title, but I have a designation through the Federation of Exchange Accommodators. I'm a certified exchange specialist.
She is about to drop some knowledge. From that title, you can tell we're about to get into some meat. Yeah.
And let me just say this. Whenever somebody asks me about 1031, I'm like, you have to talk to Mary Hogan.
For sure.
You have to talk to Mary, because the knowledge that she has is so much, and you're going to see all the knowledge here in just a few.
I love it. Thanks. That's my preferred, by the way. I tell all of our people, just send them to me and I'll answer the questions.
Yes, and we prefer that as well.
Okay. We're on the same page. I love it.
Yes.
Okay.
So tell us just a smidge about you and how long you've been with the company, etc.
Well, I have been with the company in this role since the late 1900s.
The late 1900s.
No. It was the last quarter of 2018.
Okay.
All right.
So it's been, I think this is year 7.
So you've been doing this for a hot minute.
Yes,
awesome.
But I have some history with Hogan. I worked at Hogan for a few years back in the 90s.
Okay.
So, and then I had 20 years in dentistry, and then I came back.
Tell me what you did originally.
I was
when you
a
were
copy
young.
shooter to start.
Yes.
And then
In the late 1900s.
Yes, exactly. And then I did, they used to scan all the files on microfiche in Joplin.
Wow.
And while I was in hygiene school, I worked with prepping files for scanning.
Okay.
And I was in Joplin, and so I would just take them to the shop.
It's wild. And then you circled back, and here we are.
Yes. And I'm married to my beloved Bud, who's one of our owners.
Bud Hogan.
Yes.
Yes.
You weren't a Hogan in the 90s.
No,
Okay.
I got married in 2001.
So you worked at Hogan before. Like,
Yes.
I don't think I realized that.
Yes.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well,
Best
what did
choice
you...
of his life.
Oh,
Probably, yeah.
I think so. Let's remind him.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, what did you bring us to drink today?
Today we have a chai tea latte from Kingdom Coffee.
Love it.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna try it.
Okay.
Just tell us
Well,
about it.
I think chai is pretty nice because it's tea, obviously. It does have some dairy in it, some spices, clove, cinnamon, cardamom,
It
ginger.
smells divine.
I think it's like a warm hug. I love it.
And so
yes.
calming.
Yes.
I love that.
Okay.
I love
Well,
a
here we
warm
go.
A
hug.
great
Cheers.
alternative.
Cheers.
Think
Cheers.
we're gonna break
Cheers.
that.
Cheers.
Okay.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
So good.
Tiny little secret. I don't typically like chai. Like, I'm not a nutmeggy, clovey, cinnamony kind of girl, but that's really good.
I think
do like
this
it.
one balances it out. Like there's a lot of that in there, but then it's still
not-
got a
it's
very
not
good
like a
tea
piece of
vibe.
cake.
It's not overly sweet or
Yeah.
it really is.
It tastes like a piece of cake.
It does. I love
Perfect
that.
at noontime.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay,
Here we
let's
go.
dive into
Let's
all
dive
the
into the meat.
questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
So 1031, I think there's a lot of misconceptions with 1031 of what qualifies and what does not qualify. So let's start there on that first layer of, can I use my residence as a 1031?
You cannot.
Okay.
So personal use is typically disqualified from 1031 exchange treatment. Second homes can qualify with fairly strict guidelines, but for the most part, the rule of thumb is it should be real estate held for investment or used for business purposes.
Okay.
So personal use is usually, you're out.
Okay. What about like a lake home? That's-
So if you are holding it for investment, it's kind of a no-brainer. Yes, it
Yes.
qualifies. If
Okay.
you're using it for personal use, then you need to discuss that use with your accountant and find out, if you qualify. It is fairly strict. You can have very limited use personally on an investment piece that would qualify for 1031 treatment.
So let's back up just for a second for those people who aren't familiar with 1031. Tell us what a 1031 exchange actually is.
So it's for real estate investors. It is a section code in the Internal Revenue Code, section 1031. That's where we get the
That's
name.
where you get that.
So the IRS is allowing investment real estate owners, to defer their capital gains tax on investment property if they qualify within the guidelines set, which is timelines, values, and qualifying replacement purchases. So if an investor is going to sell real estate and they're going to see gain at that sale, they have two choices. They can pay the gain on that year's return,
Taxes, which is a lot.
or if they know they're going to reinvest and they can, comply with the timelines and the rules, then they can defer that gain onto qualifying replacement purchases.
So it sort of puts the money on a pause for a certain period of time?
No, basically you don't pay it at all. You're just deferring it onto a qualified property.
Okay.
So it allows you to thereby increase kind of your equity, because you're not taking taxes out to pay gain. You're reinvesting following the guidelines and rules, and then thereby the dynamic is to increase your portfolio over time, defer the gain by following the rules of the exchange, and then just kind of moving along.
Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, if you're investing, selling and buying and selling and buying, 1031 is going to pay for itself tenfold. I mean, it's just an amazing program.
It's a very good option.
And so you're building that portfolio and you're building your investments, and you're really setting yourself up.
The main thing I would tell clients is to, especially early investors, people who have not been in investment real estate for a long time, talk to their accountants about qualification and what works and what doesn't work, because while you are releasing property and replacing property through this section code, there are some guidelines. Like you can't really, I think it's frowned upon to use like flipping real estate.
Okay.
You really need to hold. The intention needs to be that you were purchasing investment for a hold. And then you've held it for a period of time. Maybe you've taken some depreciation. Maybe you've obviously increased your value from when you bought it. That's why you would see gain on a sale. And that's why they're allowing you to then, through these parameters, replace that property, usually at a higher value, and defer the gain off of that sale to the qualifying property.
And am I making it up that is there a typical time frame? Like, am I making it up that there's like 6 months?
Yes.
Like you can hold it. That's what I meant by the pause. Like there's a 6 month pause or
it's
year?
180-day timeline.
Okay.
Yes.
That's quicker than I thought.
From the sale days of so say Barbie comes and she's going to sell an investment property. And then, so Hogan holds those funds, correct?
Hogan holds the funds.
Hogan holds the funds in like an escrow account for 1031s.
Yes.
So I send that money over to Mary with Hogan, and then you have 100 and how many days?
80 days.
Well, so the exchange timeline starts in a regular forward exchange, which is the most typical type. It starts at the date of the sale. The seller has 45 days to identify what they plan to purchase in the exchange. They have a total of 180 days to get it bought. So part of the tasks that we are burdened with, in a good way, is that as a qualified intermediary, so that's the role we fulfill, the taxpayer cannot have possession or control of the proceeds for the period of the exchange. So you have to have a qualified intermediary to create the paperwork and the agreements and the documentation, which includes documentation on the settlement statement. They need to hold the funds in escrow until you identify qualifying replacement property. And then we disperse those funds at the closing of any qualified replacement property. Yes. Sometimes people will just make a 1-for-1, so they sold one and bought one. Sometimes they're selling one and buying multiple properties. Sometimes they need to buy first. But they know they have a property to sell, so we offer reverse exchange services. Sometimes they've sold and they've started a forward or delayed exchange, but then they find property that needs improvement. So then they transition to an improvement construction exchange, which we also offer those services. And every transaction's different. There are definitely rules and guidelines. There's generalities, but talking to the clients often and early before closing is the most important thing.
Yes. So, Mary, say if we get to a week out of a closing and somebody goes, you know what? I know I'm closing next week, but I think I want to do a 1031. Is it too late?
It's not. No,
Okay.
typically it is not. If what is too late, obviously we like time in advance to
Yes.
prepare, because I prepare documents, I work with you guys on statement arrangements, and obviously the funds have to be, flowing into the proper avenue. So it's not too late. We like to have some advance notice, but when it's too late is if they've signed the papers, closed the deal, and taken the funds.
Yes. If they've walked out the door with the funds.
Yes.
Or
There's
the ink isn't dry.
Yes.
Like it's too late.
Yes.
The minute they
Yes.
sign.
Well,
Okay.
and it's,
Yeah.
if they've called us the next day and go, you know what, I meant to do a 1031 yesterday.
I'd sure like to not pay the taxes.
Hindsight is this is the cliche.
Yes.
We work very diligently to try to get last minute deals together for people, because it does happen.
You
and
have.
sometimes they do, all of this due diligence through the process with their agents, and this property's been marketed for a while, and they get to closing and it just never occurred to them.
Yeah.
And somebody
Yeah.
will randomly mention it, or they happen to call their accountant, and their accountant's like,
Why did
and
you?
so yes, there's a little scrambling there, but we typically can get it
I
together.
think we've had a closing that it was like literally the day before, and I was like, I'll call Mary, and Mary pulls it through, and she's like, I can get it. Just give me the information. We'll get it done. We'll get it completed.
Yeah. Wow.
And you really bent over backwards to make sure everything
thanks.
was done properly.
My
and-
favorite thing in that scenario is to actually talk to the client, because you are on a short timeline, you're trying to get things done for them, and what I want to know is to kind of hit the punch list of, is this really applicable for 1031 treatment?
Does it even
Yes.
qualify for all of the things?
And and typically the first question is, have you talked to your accountant about this?
Yes.
We rely heavily on clients' accountants, because as a QI, we are not permitted to provide any tax or legal advice. And so if a qualification question comes up, or a question about taxes, or the legalities of who's taking title and how they sold and whatnot, we're referring back out to the accountant or the client's attorney for direction on that.
Awesome.
And so being in touch with them and having a communication like all the way through the process is super important, but especially on a last minute deal, because sometimes people will put things together, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
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 So
I'm going to sell a property. I'm selling my property today. I have 45 days to find a new property. What if I'm getting to that 40th day and I'm having a problem and I need a couple of days, or what happens then?
Well, so the ID form is really specific in particular.
Okay.
The ID deadline really can't be extended.
Okay.
There's been exceptions to that. We had some extensions during COVID. We've had extensions for natural disasters. So it depends on where your home is located, or the investment real estate is located, on whether or not you would qualify for any sort of applicable extensions. But for the most part, the rule of thumb is no.
Okay.
If you're on day 40 and you have not identified, then you need to either find some property quick, which you do not have to be under contract to ID. So you're providing address information on the form of potential properties you're going to purchase.
Okay. So you
So-
don't have to be under contract in 45 days.
No,
So I was like, that
you
could be
have to
challenging.
identify.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, but as you guys know, things in real estate move quickly and happen fast. And
Yes.
sometimes you don't know what will happen.
Right.
So if on the 40th day they find 3 properties that could be potential replacements, they can list those on the form, make sure it's signed, it's dated and received by me for the file prior to the deadline or on the deadline. And then basically it's up to them to use the remainder of the 180-day period to get one of those under contract, or however many they need to fulfill their value. If that doesn't work out, or they're not able to identify anything, then their exchange is failed.
Gotcha.
And that happens from time to time.
What if it's not one of those 3? Does it have to be one of the 3?
If you're past the 45th day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once that 45th day passes, you can only buy what you've identified.
Okay.
And so we do have some exchanges that fail, but it's pretty rare. And clients can identify up to 3 properties without any rules or obligations.
Okay.
So
Okay.
even if they're only intending on buying one, I remind them that they could list a couple of backups, because sometimes
good
people
idea.
are under
Yeah.
contract within 45 days.
Right, right.
And if we're getting to the deadline, a lot of times I'll send a quick email and say, is there anything else you want to list? Some people are closed within 45 days. So some
Yeah.
exchanges run the whole length.
Yeah.
Some are, kind
Like
of.
closing the next week.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it really kind of depends.
Yeah.
But the deadlines are the deadlines, and they're
Yes.
very strict. Yeah.
So say if I'm selling a property, but I need to use a portion of those funds because maybe I did a remodel or I put a fence on that property or something like that, and I need to take a part of those funds to pay off this. Can I do that? Or do I have to put all those funds from my proceeds into 1031?
Well, so 1031 is based on value. I work with sales price value.
Okay.
So if you're selling in a 1031 for 275, then you need to buy property 275 or greater to fully defer your gain.
Okay.
If you only bought property that, say, is a value of 225,
Okay.
your exchange is still valid, but you've got a tax consequence on the difference.
Okay.
Okay, so that
Yes.
that works, and
Okay.
it's much kind of the same point if people take cash out at the sale, which we see, and I always say, run that by your accountant, because I can give direction on a settlement statement all day long based on what they want to
Yeah.
do, but they need to understand that's a taxable event.
Okay.
So cash out at the sale or unused proceeds at the end.
It's going to be
taxable.
taxed.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, but they're going to be taxed on it. If they need
Yes.
$10,000 for a fence.
Yes.
Great.
And sometimes like improvements that they've made, this is where, like I was saying, I work in sales price values. Their accountant is going to talk to them about improvements that they made over the course of that ownership. Their adjusted basis of when they sold relative to when they bought is going to be, factor in depreciation and improvements and things. So they may not need to take that cash out because they're going to have some allowance from a tax standpoint on those improvements. And so that's when I would say, before you decide, talk to your accountant, get their direction and advice, and then, we kind of go from there.
Awesome.
Okay.
Very nice.
Well, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
There's such an ease with the information that comes from you that makes people, I feel like, go, okay, they've got this. I don't need to worry about it. It's not like, even in the urgency, I can hear her calm voice, right?
Yes.
Can't you?
Very
So
calm.
it's, if you need to do a 1031 exchange all day long, this is your
really
resource.
like people. It's funny because and I like to interact with people.
Yeah.
So, and this is a very
People-centric.
customer
Mhm.
service and yes, people-centric scenario. Although I'm not an escrow agent, and so a lot of times that comes in, and I'm they're asking closing questions, and they're like, "When do we sign with you?" And I'm like, "Well."
You go see Jennifer
Barbi, you go in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I do love it. I like to talk to people, and I like to kind of problem solve with them. And I kind of feel, like it's also a team effort with
for sure.
their accountants. Who I work with so many wonderful accountants in the area who are always happy to provide advice, and I think also appreciate that we're sending their clients to them to ask these questions.
Yes, because there's nothing worse than the same thing that you probably run into when it's too late for a 1031.
Yes.
It's too late. You owe all these taxes. Let me
Yes.
help you not have to do that. And
Yes.
part of that is a
Yes.
potential 1031.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Mary, for coming by and hanging out with us.
We
and
know
having
you're
some
so
chai
busy,
tea.
and we are so appreciative that
Yes.
she
Well,
has popped in
send
here.
people my way. I will
For
be
sure.
happy to talk on the phone or email or whatever. You don't, you
Will
can
do.
answer questions if you like, but I'm always there for you.
I listen.
we'll
I'm
defer.
90% of the time. I'm like 90% of the time. I'm like, you need to talk to Mary. That's who you need to talk to.
90% of the people that call me say, Jennifer said I need to.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're so glad
Thanks
you
for
came
having
with us
me.
today.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye.